Hey guys, my name is Ryan, and welcome to Overwatch Central. So Reinhardt is an interesting, intricate hero that can win or lose the game based on his positioning and his decision making. But because he's such an integral pick, there are opportunities where you yourself may have to pick him up. And if you're not very confident on him, that could be a big problem. Now we've got Reinhardt quick start guides and a Master Reinhardt video that we did with Numlocked, but this video is based around the premise that you found yourself in a situation where you're playing Reinhardt and you want a nice straightforward breakdown of what you should and should not be doing in a fairly timely fashion. We'll be going over what your role within a team is, each of the abilities and how to effectively use them, and you can also find a huge info dump of referenced videos and threads from the multiple Overwatch subreddits in the description below. But we have a lot to get through, so let's crack on. I want to start off first by talking about the shield, and the main tip that I really want to give here to a lot of people is to not take unnecessary shield damage. Your shield is a really important piece of kit and it can be really easy to overuse it. Having 40,000 damage blocks might be well and good at the end of a competitive match, but what it can also suggest is that you've got your shield up far too often in situations where you don't need it up, just in situations where you're not protecting anyone. A good example of this is an example on screen now. The Reinhardt stood there not protecting anybody, so I'm just shelling away at his shield. It's okay to take some damage in the choke. It gives your healer some ult charge, but just be aware of times that you need your shield up and times that you need to drop it and rest it whilst you're not protecting anyone. It's a good opportunity to lick your wounds and prepare for the next fight, either on attack or defense. But do watch out for those hooks and sleeps, basically abilities that can incapacitate you and pull you out of the fight. A quick tip as well, if you want to be able to move forwards and backwards at a little bit more pace whilst you have your shield up, then doing the bunny hop that I'm showing on screen is a good way of doing it. Again, watch out for well-timed hooks and sleeps, but it's a good way of backing out of fights quickly whilst still mitigating some damage. Sometimes though, it's just worth moving back slowly. Another tip is to just let people know that your shield is dropping. It's a simple thing, and it's a shame that there's no chat wheel function for the shield for console players, but just generally indicate to people when you're about to drop your shield to rest it or it's about to die. Just keep people updated. And also with the shield, you need to know when to have the shield up and when to just drop it and swing like a madman. Good opportunities to just hold down left click or your primary fire close to the end of objectives, when they're stalling on it, Lucio's jumping on it, Tracer's, stuff like that. When you're nano boosted and there are enemies close by, although you might want to lift that shield up if there's an Ana, because she might try and sleep you. So just try and bait that out if you can. When you're hacked by Sombra, you can't really do anything else, so just swing like a madman. And also with an ult in Genji sort of zapping around a point, you can't really block any of the damage with your shield, so you may as well just get that hammer out and try and whack him out of the air. Another key thing is positioning, and this is something that you've got to feel out and practice over time. Definitely jump into some quick play games and get used to it, but you always want to have some form of like wall or building near to you to use as immediate cover if your shield dies. Think of them as like infinite shields that you can use. Another tip on positioning would be, if you're going to sort of push into an objective and dedicate to it, then you need to dedicate fully. You need to keep moving forwards, don't stop, don't stand still. It's really easy to clear a point where the Reinhardt doesn't really want to dedicate to the push, and you can just sort of clean up house. So as a Reinhardt, you want to be much more confident, pushing forward, making sure that your team is with you, but also be aware of Symmetras and Maze that might be trying to sort of snag you out of the team. It's all to do with confidence about your positioning. If you're confident, people will follow you into battle, but if you're unsure or hesitating, people won't want to stand with you or behind you. But a lot of the psychological battle with Reinhardt is going up against the enemy Reinhardt. You need to take a good look at them and see their kind of playstyle. If they're being super aggressive, trying to do stupid charges onto the point. We've had flanking Reinhardts, earth shattering from the top of King's Row, stuff like that. But if they're passive, keeping up that shield a lot, just run up to them, hit them a couple of times, it's easy ult charge, that sort of thing. Work out what kind of Reinhardt you're playing against and then try and counter him. Next up, I want to talk about Reinhardt's two abilities, the charge and the fire strike. Charging is a crux and is most definitely my biggest weakness playing Reinhardt. So a lot of the time, if you're unsure about charging, it's probably best not to. You want to be using it in situations where you know where the charge will take you. Now I've got two examples here to show, the first being a bit of an audacious charge here to get this Reinhardt as he's coming into the choke. Could have easily gone wrong in my favour, but I managed to catch him out, and again I know where I'm going to land. The second is a charge that I do miss, but again I'm not travelling too fast, so it's not the end of the world. If I did miss though and travelled sort of 10 to 20 yards, then that is a big problem. But because my charge was aimed at a wall nearby, even though I missed him, I'm back in the fight pretty much instantly. You just want to use it as a quick damage dealer. The only time that you want to be charging over a considerable distance is when you're charging back to your team, maybe you've overextended and you need to get back quickly, or if your target is nano boosted. Now, say for example, there's a nano boosted Reinhardt or a nano boosted Winston like on screen now. I want to get him out of the fight. I don't want him to do any damage to anyone, so I've just charged him off the map. It's killed me, it's killed him, but it's a very fair trade considering an ult was used there. The fight was pretty comfortable, so I'm pretty confident that my team can hold the point there. Another thing you want to be doing as Reinhardt is counter-charging when a Reinhardt charges you. If you're in that situation where he's going to catch you anyway, you might as well stun him as well. Of course, if you can move out the way, then you definitely should, but if there's no other option, you might as well charge him. He's going to incapacitate you anyway, so you might as well just stun him back. Now, Fire Strike. This is the main ultimate charge generator for you, but you have to be incredibly useful when using it if you're heavily protecting your team. If you've got weak targets like a Zenyatta behind you, and you're dropping that shield to Flame Strike, there's a good opportunity that this guy might get taken out, especially if the enemy team have something like a Widowmaker. So you basically want to be taking pot shots with a Fire Strike when you're not being relied on to mitigate a lot of damage, but you want to be using this as often as you possibly can. But once you have your ultimate, should you stop Fire Striking? Some would say so. There are a couple of threads below that do suggest that that's a good idea, but I'm not necessarily a fan. If this was common advice, you could tell when the enemy has their ultimate as they'll stop Fire Striking, right? So I don't want to give the enemy any indication whether I have my ultimate or not. It's kind of like a poker face almost. And speaking of the ultimate, let's talk about that a little bit. There are two ways that you can use it. You can use it as this multi-kill hammer machine if you can knock a lot of their team down, or you can use it more as an interrupt to stop the enemy pushing, and the latter is probably the priority here. Say for example, an enemy soldier gets nano boosted and runs on a corner, you want to ult him, you want to stop him, you want to shut down that ultimate as much as possible. Both those ultimates have been shut down, so you can stun him, flame strike him, hit him if he's close to kill him, or charge him away like I said earlier with the Winston example. That's the main way that you want to be using it, especially on nano boosted targets that could wipe out your whole team if you're not prepared. If you do get an Earth Shatter that gets multiple people, then make sure to prioritize the targets. Get the healers instead of trying to whack everyone and get a multi-kill. Make sure that the Mercy or the Ana, whoever might be in that, goes down first. Try not to use it for other synergies. For example, if you've got a Zarya and a Pharah on your team, let those two synergize together instead of throwing your Earth Shatter in, because that's 3 ults used that may not necessarily be needed. The only time that I would recommend using the Earth Shatter is if they have a Lucio and Zen in there as well, as they may have ultimates to sort of mitigate those two ultimates that are coming in. But at the latter end of this video, I want to talk about probably one of the most fun things to do as Reinhardt, and that's trying to do the baiting ultimate game against the enemy Reinhardt. And this is a lot to do with psychology. This is like a mental fortitude battle between you and the enemy Reinhardt. And you always want to be in a situation where you have your ultimate and you know that they don't have theirs. Then that can be difficult to try and guess how much ult charge that they may have. So you have to try and estimate their ult charge. Pay attention to if their fire strikes are landing, how long it's been since they last ulted, and you can also see people's movement change when they've got ult. Like they're trying to weigh up the ultimate and try and get everybody in a line so they can ult them. And they also tend to be a little bit more aggressive when pushing. So if all of these things go off, whether you think they have ult and they're acting a little bit off, then they are looking to use their ultimate. Baiting is all about getting the enemy to use their ultimate into your shield, which will completely nullify it. And it's a very difficult thing to do, but here are some pointers. The best way to do it is to bait the defensive Earth Shatter. When your team uses an ultimate such as a nano boost on you, a sound barrier, or everybody's bunched up in the graviton, the best thing that I found to do is to run up to the enemy with your shield down. Right, I'm gonna knock 7 shades of shit out of you guys, sort of thing. The enemy Reinhardt should panic. He should be like, oh god, I need to ult now because they're all running at me. And that's when you just lift your shield up at the right moment and nullify the ult. It can be a very easy thing to do if you have an initiating ability like the 3 that I mentioned. When the enemy realise that you're dedicating ults to this push or this fight, then they will want to use their own ultimates as well. But basically running into the Reinhardt with your shield down, very aggressive, and then lifting it up at the right second is probably the best way to do it. As I said, this takes a lot of practice and a lot of experience as well. You get used to how people play and you sort of have to feel it out. But the main pointers that I want to make in this video is that you are a shield. You want to make sure that you're mitigating as much damage as you possibly can, but please don't overdo it. Just constantly keep asking yourself whether your shield is actually protecting anything important, and just make sure to save them for situations where you definitely need it. Don't charge unless you can confirm where you're going. The longer you charge, the more unpredictable it can be, especially if you're being aggressive with it. Fire strike often to get ult charge, but make sure that nobody's behind you that might die if you drop your shield. And don't hold on to your ultimate to try and get the multi-hammer down. It's a lot better to just shut down important ults that the enemy might be using, especially if you're defending and trying to sort of protect a point. But I understand there's a lot there, there's a lot to bear in mind. As I said, there are tons of reading and videos below which you can check out, including one amongst many's first coaching a many video which features my very, very bad Reinhardt. But you can see some good examples of the stuff that I'm showing on the screen now and back then. But that's it for this time. Thank you very much for watching. Do let us know if there are any other heroes that you would like us to go over in the sort of Ana guide for non-Ana players, Lucio guide for non-Lucio players, that sort of stuff. Do let us know in the comments below. And until next time, take care. We'll see you then.